High as can. I'll show that Bambi deer back there. That deer was literally on the day it was being born. This mama ran out in front of a car in front of me, and I guess she was freaking out during the birthing process. She got hit, and I tried to save it. You know, it was half out of its mama in the middle of the birthing process. And I wiped the slime away from its face, and I tried to blow in air into it. And I had high ideals of taking it to the Yellow River Game Ranch and having them raise that poor little baby deer to fruition. Kind of an interesting mount if you look at it. I'll turn my volume off. It's kind of an interesting mount because it literally is on the day that deer was being born. So that you see that raccoon, that's a full-grown raccoon next to it. With that little baby deer right there, that's literally on the day it was being born. That's my hand next to it, to give you an idea how big it is. Anyways, I come on here occasionally to do political posts. This one's not political at all. So you people that are screening us, you can calm down. I'm not doing a political post today. I do a lot of stuff that, I try to bring God into it and what have you. And I get dreams sometimes that I feel are God-given and the world needs to know about. So I come on and I try to, inform people about what those dreams are. I've done this post before, but they're pretty good about cutting it off. I don't know why, but they did. I can tell you right now that this is gonna blow your mind if you've never heard it. You might have all kinds of questions and negativity about it. I can ace a Mensa test, and I've been that way my whole life. I'm pretty good at it. As a matter of fact, this Georgia Tech shirt I have on right here, I was sitting down at a club one night, and I had about a half a buzz going. And some Georgia Tech students came in. They sat down next to me. We were talking, and it just came over to the conversation where I said, I never took engineering, but I climb trees for a living. And my dad, who is an engineer, said you might as well be an engineer to climb trees. And they were all in the engineering class up there at Georgia Tech, and they said, yeah, our professor's he's pretty good. He's going to teach us all how to be great engineers and stuff. And I asked them if they had ever taken a Mensa test. And one of them piped right up, our professor gave us a Mensa test this week. And he said, this is what the question was. He said, it's a really simple question, but it's a hard answer. Matter of fact, he said only about 1 out of 50,000 people could answer this accurately. And I got I got my interest perked because I do pretty good on Mensa tests. And I look at them kind of like Chinese puzzles. Our daddy used to get us Chinese puzzles for our stockings for Christmas. Yeah, I used to love to do the darn thing. But anyway, he said, you have a pie. And he said, just think of a pumpkin pie, apple pie, whatever, I said, okay. He says, you're allowed to make 3 cuts on that pie. He says, how do you make 3 cuts and get 8 equal portions? And I kind of, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Oh, I got it. And I gave him the answer. Well, right away he starts telling me, no. He says, you have to make a horizontal cut. And I said, excuse me, but didn't you just say equal portions? And the kid went, yeah. And I said, well, equal doesn't mean anything besides size and shape. So if you do a horizontal cut, and if you do the math properly and put the cut in the right place, you do your calculus and you get your cut in just the right place, you get equal volume, but you'll never get equal portions. because portion, equal portion means size and shape. Boy, that Georgia Tech student, he thought about it for a minute, and his jaw kind of hit the bar, He realized that the answer he was trying to give me was the one that he'd given on the test. But he also realized that the answer that I'd given him was the correct answer. And I'm not going to give it to y'all. I'm going to let y'all think about it. If anybody gets it, then feel free to chime in and let me know. Or, at the end of this, there'll be a place where you can post it. But I kind of doubt that I'll get an answer to it, because I have 2 questions that I've taken off of Mensa tests over the years. And one of them I took out of a Reader's Digest condensed version. I'll be honest with you, I crumpled the paper up, threw it in the trash when it said what it might mean. Because it seemed so easy, I just couldn't fathom that had that kind of potential. But I got curious about it, and I took it out of the trash. I unfolded it, and I started giving it to different people I knew. And because I'm in the tree business, I knew a lot of different people. And come to find out, people really can't do them. So everybody's got a gift, though, I can't paint, I can't sing, I can't do a lot of things that other people can do. But I'm very, very, very mechanically inclined, and I always have been. I ran a tree service for about 30 years, and I always had to keep about 6 balls in the air at the same time, if you know what I mean, just to keep that running for, 25, 30 years like I did. And so, I have that knack. But anyway, this is going to kind of go back to that knack. But in a way it's not, because have you ever got a dream in the middle of the night and you wake up and you just know there's something God-given about it? There's something about that dream that it's like it didn't come from you. It came from someplace else. Now, of course, we all know we got the devil on one shoulder and we got God on the other, and we have to kind of distinguish between the two. And some of the dreams that people get they're from the devil. And some of the dreams that people get, and if it's a safety-oriented dream, if it's a health-oriented dream, or if it's a dream that might save a bunch of students in a school from being shot up, all because all they have to do is put a gunshot detector that only opens up a safe during a gunshot. In other words, unless the gunshot alarm goes, and it doesn't have to be an alarm that everybody can hear, because here in the state of Georgia they got a pilot program where the teacher has a tag on her neck, and it tells her whether there's a student in a different room that's having a peanut allergy or falling out and having a convulsion, or if there's actually a shooter in the school. It tells her. But they really should incorporate the gunshot detectors with that. That way the first shot that goes off, it tells them what's going on. And of course, with bulletproof sheetrock and bulletproof glass, they could make sure that every once in a while they do an alarm, if you will, where the teachers know to go to, that particular spot in the school. I gotta plug my phone in. I'm sorry about that. If I don't, it'll run dead on me. Anyway, the teachers know if they use a gunshot detector, they can, maybe save some lives, or they should know. Anyway, it could be a safe that, what are parents day-to-day, their issues with teachers having day-to-day access to guns, even if they're certified and trained. The parents' issues are not what you might think. Their issues are that, they think a student might overpower the teacher. They think that the teacher might go a little wackadoo one day because she's having a bad day or whatever. And so that's why, truthfully, honestly, that, I've asked people, why wouldn't you want a teacher to have day-to-day access? I got a lot of Democratic friends, and I voted Democratic for a long time. I voted for Obama the first time until I found out he was really a Muslim, a traitor to America, and then there went half the people that were watching me. Anyway, I decided that, I wasn't going to do that anymore. But anyway, getting back to gunshot detectors, what the teachers that are certified and trained, what's the problem with them having a gun? Parents don't want them to have a gun because they're scared that some student will overpower them. Parents don't want them to have a gun because they're scared that the teacher might go a little wackadoo. Okay. You put a gunshot detector in there. You have a 3700 ohm resistor on the line, so if somebody cuts the line, it sets the alarm off. You have it in the main office where there's two key switches, kind of like in a Nike missile site. They're far enough away where it takes both the principal and the vice principal to put their code in and turn the key simultaneously on a non-school day so that they can go do their training and maintenance and upkeep on their weapons. Okay. You get teachers that are armed to protect the students, and they don't even necessarily have to be armed with lethal force, although I would recommend it, because if somebody comes in to shoot up the school, as far as I'm concerned, you need to meet, fight fire with fire. If they got lethal force, you need to have lethal force too. But there's been people that have suggested them having beanbag shotguns, and they have flashbangs now that are kind of like what they have on the embassies that shoot the rubber bullets out. They can still kill people. You get hit in the temple with that rubber bullet, it could kill you. But I mean, if you sling that thing up underneath their feet, it's going to kill something, but it's not going to kill them. It might bring them down where they can be addressed or dealt with, or what have you. When the police do show up, because inside that safe that won't open unless the gunshot detector goes off, which I wish Brian Kemp of Georgia would have took this on as part of his pilot program that he's doing right now with the teachers. I sure wish he would have thought about putting a gunshot detector in there with it. It's got like 6 different indicators on their ID card, tells them 6 different things that could be going on. The students don't even know if there's a shooter in the school, but the teacher does. I mean, they could incorporate that the same way with a gunshot detector. Anyway, you can't fool it with bangs and firecrackers and backfiring vehicles and so on and so forth. I don't know how much people know about science, but everything comes in waves, and it literally reads a wave of a gunshot. They use them in the big cities, and they set them up on the top of buildings and telephone poles and such. And what they do is they triangulate and they GPS locate the exact location of the gunshot. And even when the police haven't been called, because people in the big cities don't want to be involved, and so the cops show up, and sometimes there's a dead body, sometimes there's somebody that they could save a life, and maybe even find out who it was that shot them and arrest them. And other times they're just out horsing around with their guns, and in those cases sometimes they're not so careful about wiping their fingerprints. But that striker on the back of that shell's got a little fingerprint of its own. So later on, when they've wiped the fingerprints off their shells and they know they're going to use a gun in a drive-by or something, they leave them shells laying on the ground to get that fingerprint from that striker. Well, then they turn around and go match them with the fingerprints they got when they were playing around with their gun that day. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but it tells the criminal element how to get around, which isn't a good idea. Look at that! I switched over to my horrible looking bed over there. It isn't even made up because I just climbed out of it to do this post. Anyway, I'm already 15 minutes into it. I want to get into this real quick. In this dream, there were these desalination factories on the ocean, and they were covered with domes, almost city in size, with a huge dome over it. The domes were kind of like a pop, not a popcorn machine, but a cotton candy machine dome. If you know what I'm talking about, plastic. Only, of course, they weren't all made in one piece. They were like made in V's or whatever. But in my dream, I talked to the guy that was on the desalination factory. I asked him, what is it these things are doing exactly? He said, oh, they're anchored right down through the center, and they catch the waves that are coming in and going out. The tidal wave. So they're always spinning the pinwheel generators, and they're kind of like, I don't know, every kid's seen those wind things that, they stick out the car window and they blow and that sort of thing. It's kind of like that. They said that the pinwheel generators around the round part of the dome shape. If the waves come up and hit that dome shape and they flow down, they turn the pinwheel generators, so it creates the electricity that's necessary to do the desalination and the pumping of the water for the thousands of miles that it's got to be pumped. And I said, thousands of miles? And he said, yeah, how else are we going to farm the deserts? Oh, okay. Well, it's a dream, so, like in a lot of dreams, things are very colorful and very vibrant and all that, especially if it's a God-given dream. They say old men will have visions. Well, this is kind of what it's like. You're half awake at 3 o'clock in the morning and you get this half dream, half vision, But anyway, I decided I wanted to see these farms, so I kind of followed these signs that were underground pipe, And so which is something that I wouldn't mind doing because I'm a hunter anyway. I kind of like going along these, out in the woods and looking around and that sort of thing. But anyway, these pipes were traveling for a long way, and I finally first thing I came to was in-ground homes. And I was looking at them and thinking, what are those, bomb shelters or something, And this guy came up out of his home and he walked up the steps and he says, what you doing? I said, oh, I'm kind of checking out where you just came from. What is that? He says, oh, that's my underground home. I said, underground home? He said, yeah, they're all over the desert. You haven't seen them yet? I said, no, what? I'd love to see it. Would you show it to me? He said, sure, come on in. And I went down inside his home, and it was set up real nice, looked just like any other home, Had all kinds of different things. There was electricity there, there was water, there was everything. And he said, you want to see what's really neat about these places? And I said, yeah. And he went over to a fan that was behind a radiator that had a valve on it. And he says, how cold you want it? And I said, I don't want it real cold, but, show me what it does, And he turned the valve open a little bit, and he turned the fan on, and it was like a radiator with a fan behind it. And what it was pre-irrigation water that was going through these radiators and flowing through them. So it wasn't like they were being stopped unless you turned the valve off. So the minute you turned the valve on, it flowed right through there and right back into the line that went out to irrigate the fields. And so he said, what do you think about that? It cools the house right off good, don't it? And I was like, yeah, I'm really impressed with the fact that that's the best conduction air conditioning I've ever seen in my life. And he said, yeah, there's no humidity with it or anything. It just goes through that radiator and, cools the place off. I said, yes, pretty cool. I like that. And so we talked a little bit more, and then he says, well, it's about time for me to go back to work. I guess I got to go, And I said, okay, I'll leave you alone. And I left out of there, and I continued to follow the buried line sign that was behind all these underground homes. And it came up to this big, unbelievably green fields of, it was just abundant. And I was looking at it thinking, this is desert land. You could tell it was just sandy desert land. It wasn't the kind of land you would normally see farming on. And I'm from a farming community, so I know a little bit about that. This stuff was growing in the desert. And I got to looking at the plants, and I said, that's marijuana. Those are marijuana plants. About that time, one of the guys that worked there at the farm come along, and he said, I heard you say them are marijuana plants. I said, yeah. He said, well, yeah, they kind of are and they kind of aren't. And I said, what do you mean they kind of aren't? He said, well, these have been genetically modified to produce seed. And I said, seed? Why do you want the seed? He said, hell, son, these things produce more oil than any crude oil pump ever coming out of the ground. And I said, really? He said, yeah, man, the seed off of this plant, it grows abundantly out here. It loves this desert soil, and it's the best solar energy. He said, they try to make these solar panels and stuff. He said, God made the best solar panel there ever was, and you're looking at it right now. And I said, you're growing hemp for seed? And he said, yeah. And I said, I want to see more of this, Well, he said, they're harvesting some of it up the way a little bit. You can go see how they harvest it, And I went up there, and it was almost like a wheat turbine going down through there, taking the seed off of the plant, and it was spitting the stalk out. It was chopping it up and spitting it out into a bolt truck, a different truck. And so it was putting seed in one side and putting the stalk off on the other side, and it was harvesting the plant. And I thought, well, that's peculiar. And about the time I was thinking that, I looked up and I saw this. It looked like a coal burning facility, but it wasn't burning coal. It was set up. They would dry this stalk out, and then they would burn the stalk in the coal burning facility to make electricity. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this is crazy, So why is it that, why are they using this particular plant? And he says to me, son, he said, this answers every question, every problem we ever had with pollution and everything. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, the seed is the best comparison to crude oil there is, only when it burns, it's a dioxide, not a monoxide. So you see that coal burning facility right there that's burning the stalk? I said, yeah. He said, that burns the stalk, but instead of it producing monoxide, it produces dioxide. Meanwhile, all these plants you're looking at everywhere you can see, as far as the eye can see, he said they love dioxide. They grow even bigger and make even bigger seed because of the dioxide. I was kind of going, wow, that's crazy, He says, you want to hear something really crazy? He says, you see that smoke coming off the top of that plant? You see how little that is? I said, yeah. He says, that's because they're scrubbing the smoke when they burn the stalk. And what they're doing is they're capturing the hydrogen gas that comes off the burning of this stalk. And I said, capturing the hydrogen gas? He says, yeah, they've been wanting to use hydrogen for years, but there's always been a problem with hydrogen. It takes X amount of energy to produce X amount of energy when it comes to hydrogen. So you can use like batteries and put them in water and create hydrogen bubbles, and you can do stuff like that, but it always takes the same amount of energy to create that amount of energy and hydrogen. The great thing that we're doing here is we're using the best solar energy available to mankind. And I went, the hemp plant? He says, yeah. He said, the closest plant to the hemp plant in producing of bulk and oil and hydrogen and all of that, he said, is the cane sugar plant. And he said, the problem with the cane sugar plant is it's not really environmentally friendly because of where it's grown on the coast. And the chemicals they use to grow it tends to get into the streams that go into the ocean, and then you get red tide, exasperation of red tide and that sort of thing. So the cane sugar plant's really not that great of an energy source. And it's only 1/10 of the amount of bulk that these hemp plants are producing. And I was going, wow, man. They're trying to produce solar panels. And God made a better solar panel than anything they could have possibly produced. And it doesn't just produce, it's not just a solar panel that produces electricity. It's not just a solar panel that produces compressed gas hydrogen. And let me tell you, if you burn hydrogen, you don't get anything but water. So that's why they've been wanting to use hydrogen for years and years now, because they know that the energy from hydrogen is perfect. It's clean. So clean energy is part of the problem, see. But the oil mongers, this guy was telling me this, and I look, I know, you know. He says in 1938, when they were making a deal going into World War II, America knew they were getting into World War II. They knew they were going to need energy. He said, you know that in 1938, the oil conglomerate of the day made a deal with the oil company saying that the hemp plant had to be illegal? And I thought about what he was saying. He said, the scientists knew back then. He said, but they had billions tied up in their pumping and finding and pumping and refining and transporting and distribution of this oil product. And so they weren't going to change their ways until it ran out. And you know, when that AOC started talking the Green New Deal, well, that's when the conservatives and the capitalists said it's time for us to pull the real Green New Deal. It's funny to me because this dream was like, it was, oh my God, it was funny, and it was adventurous, it was intuitive, it was so much stuff involved with it. And now I've read a lot about it, some of this stuff, so I know a lot of this had to come from me. But at the same time, the way this dream was laid out, it was like a perfect, I mean, it just was perfectly answering. You know, AOC said nobody could fly an airplane. Well, hey, you can do anything with this oil here that you could do with crude oil. You can make grease with it. You can lubricate engines. You can refine it into gasoline. You can refine it into diesel. You can do anything you want to do with it. It's the same thing as crude. It's exactly like crude oil, except that it's not toxic. Crude oil produces monoxide. This produces dioxide. In all these plants you see all over the place right here, guess what? They love dioxide. They convert it into oxygen better than any plant known to man. Why? Because they produce 90% more bulk than any other plant on the face of the planet. Do the math. If they're producing the bulk at 90% better rate than any other plant on the planet, they're converting dioxide to oxygen better than any other plant on the planet. Come on, man, you kidding me, right? No. He says, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go over. He just wanted me to know, so he says, I'm gonna go over it real quick. I'm gonna tell you, you know, the different different things that this plant does, just so you know. I got a list here somewhere that I wrote. There it is. He says, I'm going to give you a quick lesson in what this plant does for people. And he says, you're not going to believe it when I tell you everything. He says, you know them in-ground homes you just went by? Yeah. Guess what they used to build them homes? And I said, wood. He said, no. He said, the fiber from this plant. And I was like dumbfounded. You use the fiber from the stalk of the plant to build those homes? Yeah, he said they build the fiber from these plants. I was really kind of set back in. He said, them guys, look, these farmers around here, the jackets that they wear when it gets cold at night, he said that's made from the fiber too. He said some of these people around here got arthritis, so they got this or that or the other ailment. He says, where do you think their medicine comes from? That's CBD oil, man. We produce that too. And then he said, look, he said, I'm going to go over real quick so you can get a grip on this, because this doesn't start here in this farm where we're farming it. It starts at the ocean. He said you get the energy from the ocean that's used to produce the desalination of the water that's necessary for these desert farms. He said then you have the clean water that they pump thousands of miles inland for clean water for these irrigation of these farms and for people to use in their homes or what have you. He said then you get the air conditioning that's not created by Freon. It's conduction air conditioning, so it doesn't do anything to the ozone layer. He says then you get energy from burning the stalk into electricity, and yes, that creates some dioxide, but the plants love it. So what they're doing is they're absorbing that dioxide and converting it to oxygen. He said, what do you think happened during 1,000,000 years of evolution? He said, this is the equivalent of deforestation. He said, they were deforesting Europe way before America was a glimmer in a patriot's eye. He said, what this stuff is doing is it's the equivalent of what old growth forest did. And they would get beetles, and they would get blight, and they would get disease, and they would be a lightning strike, and they would burn. And my dad was a geologist, so I knew what he was saying was true. They would burn for decades on end, sometimes multiple decades. He said, what, did you think that hurt the environment? And he was right. No, it didn't. Why? Because there was enough old growth forest to convert that dioxide back into oxygen. See? So it wasn't like it is now where they're drilling in the ice core and they're finding out that, hey, we got a higher dioxide carbon rate than we have over the last 600,000 years. Why? Because we're taking oil out of the ground and we're burning it, but we're not doing anything to convert it. So the conversion rate of dioxide to oxygen is the real answer to the problem. Anyway, so he goes on and he tells me, okay, and then they turn around after they burn in the stalk for electricity and they capture the hydrogen gas. Well, why is it they get hydrogen gas? He said because it takes X amount of energy to make X amount of energy from burning the stalk. That's where they get the hydrogen gas from. What comes from hydrogen gas? How does it hurt? It doesn't hurt anything. The worst thing that comes from hydrogen gas, he said, and you know what they did? They made the oil companies, because we've been giving them subsidies for years, they made them put compressed gas pumps on every corner. Now, some of them are still using methane and stuff, which isn't really good for the environment, but there's a lot of them that are using hydrogen, and guess who the customers are going to? They're paying a few pennies more per pound of hydrogen than they would for the methane, because they know it's better for the environment. And it burns perfectly clean, so it makes their engines last longer. I mean, this guy was just filling my head with all kinds of crazy stuff. I couldn't believe the stuff he was telling me. It was just unbelievable. And then he says, okay, besides the fact that the oil is exactly like any crude oil, except for that it's not monoxide, it's dioxide when it burns, which means other plants can convert it. And who knows how well, it's just like if you were in a car and you stuck hook up to the muffler and stuck a hose into the car, you're not going to want to breathe that. It's poison. Well, that monoxide is different than dioxide, and who knows how well a plant actually converts that to start with. So, he had another point there. But anyway, then he said the biggest thing about this, the most important thing about this, is we make biodegradable plastic. It's environmentally friendly. We can feed the plastic to our farm animals for fodder. And there's 30 tons of plastic going in the ocean every year. He said if any plastic of ours goes in the ocean, the fish can eat it, and it just makes them healthier. So, I mean, I just couldn't believe all the different things that this one magical plant. I mean, it was like God's magic plant, sent down to, it's crazy because it was just so, everything was in this one magic plant. And then the guy says to me, and it really blew my mind when he said this to me. He said, hey, Kenny, he said, what's God's biblical number? And I thought about it for a second, and I said, I think it's 7. Isn't 7 his biblical number? He said, that's right. He said, how many things did I just go over with you? 7? You got it. Okay, now I'm going to take you into my realm. I told you earlier I like to do Mensa tests. I find them exciting. I just like going down like that. Right. Something's going up there. Okay. I find a Mensa test exciting. It's just one of them things. It's something I like. Like I said, our daddy used to give us Chinese puzzles in our stockings for Christmas, and he was a firm believer as an engineer that you don't just learn. And you don't just teach your children. You teach them how to learn. And so this is me being able to ace a Mensa test. Is just one of my favorite people in the whole world is Albert Einstein. This is Albert Einstein's quote. Raise new questions, explore new possibilities, regard old problems from a new angle. Albert Einstein. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story about Albert Einstein. And believe me, I'm no Albert Einstein. But I got like maybe 1/10 to 1/100th of his ability. Okay? And so I know that, he had a photographic memory. I don't have one. He had my ability times 1,000. I said 1/10. It's probably more like 1,000. Because I'm pretty creative, and I can come up with stuff, and I managed to get through the day with a tree service sometimes, and people would look at what I did and scratch their head, and how the heck did you come up with that? And that kind of stuff. But Albert Einstein was considered socially inept. We're talking the smartest man in the world. To date, I don't believe anybody's been as smart as Albert Einstein. And some people might say that, Stephen Hawking was. I don't believe he was. Sexton, I don't believe he was. I believe Albert Einstein, especially when you consider the time that he was born and the knowledge that was available at that time and what have you, he was brilliant. He was as brilliant as they come. Anyway, he was considered socially inept because of this one incident, and I'm going to tell you about it. He was at a dinner party, and this was, we're talking right after indoor plumbing, okay? They discovered indoor plumbing somewhere in the mid to late 20s, and so he was at a dinner party right after they had discovered indoor plumbing, and the people were going around the table asking the men. This was kind of chauvinistic crap that went on back then. Well, they were asking the men, well, what do you like in a woman, you know? And there was one guy, oh, I like them to have big breasts. I like that big-breasted woman. I don't know what it is about that. I just can't help myself. And then the next guy, oh, geez, I like them to have legs all the way up to their butt. You know, that's just something I like. I can't help myself, you know. The next guy comes along and he's, you know, I like a woman that challenges me intellectually. I like somebody who I can have a conversation with and you know, they're on my level, you know. And then they went to ask Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein made a really simple statement. He said, give me a smelly woman. Oh, everybody was shocked at that statement. And of course, the gracious host that she was, she immediately changed the subject so that he wouldn't be any further embarrassed by what he had said. Are you kidding me? They're worried about embarrassing him, the smartest man in the world. What they missed, what every one of them missed, and they considered him socially inept for this. His whole life he was considered socially inept for that statement. What they all missed was the follow-up question. Why is that, Mr. Einstein? And I can guarantee you what his answer would have been. Well, you know, been a million years. We ain't never ever had indoor plumbing. Now we're using 27 times more water than we would have if we'd have gone down to the creek or had to lug our, even the pump from outside, having to pump it and bring it in and put it in the tub. You know, women used to bathe once a week. Now they want to bathe 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, it's going to be a problem. He didn't get to say that though, see, because they changed the subject. I'm saying that. I'm telling you that's what his answer would have been. Okay. But it's the same thing as what I just went over. What did I just go over? All of these answers to these problems. Why? Because you look at old problems from a new perspective. You look at old problems from a new angle. You think outside the box. You put things into perspective in a way that makes sense. They were deforesting Europe hundreds of years before America was a glimmer in the Patriot's eye. Could it be that it's not about clean energy? Could it be that it's really about deforestation? What if we can grow the one plant that converts dioxide carbon to oxygen 90% better than any other plant on the face of the planet? And we can cover the deserts with it. Syrians could go back home. That could be the start. Okay, let's start. Let's see how this works out right here. Let's do it for the Syrian people first. You know, they had a drought. And the oil mongers were like, oh great, there's a drought. Let's go in there and start a war. Let's get them off that property. Then we can frack the crap out of it, destroy the land and the water. Why? Because the oil mongers in the military industrial complex are like that. They don't want to think about solutions, real solutions. You know, there could be a time in our future where there's elevators that go up to hotels in space. Are we ever going to see it? Not if we keep warring along the way we've been. That's what I love about Trump. You can say what you want, people. He acts dumb just so people will put him on mainstream news so that he could turn out to be, oh, you know what he said it turned out to be right. Let me tell you something about Trump. He built these buildings. Think about the analytical, the logistical stuff that he had to keep. I used to have to keep 10 balls in the air just running a tree service. Imagine how many balls he had to keep in the air running building those buildings. And they want to bash him because he sued people? Hey, if he didn't sue people when they didn't live up to their end of the contract, you know, they're doing the drywall and then they get the guy that's supposed to come in right behind them and do the painting, but he can't do it because the guy that did the drywall didn't live up to his end of the contract. Let me tell you, if he didn't sue people that didn't live up to their end of the contract, he'd have never built a big building. Not even one. Unfortunately, that was something he had to deal with. It was something he had to do. Anyway, God bless y'all. I love y'all. I know God loves y'all. And he wants what's best for us. Right? He wants us to smarten up. I've read the Bible front to back. And there's nothing in it that contradicts anything scientific that I'm saying to you. Not one thing. And you know what? Einstein believed in God too. He did. And he talked about the different dimensions and stuff. And he gets into stuff like I like to get into. People used to think I had 3 heads. I'd say, you know, you could be at point A. But point B is where you think you are. Well, as soon as point C is achievable, and we're talking Elon Musk and artificial intelligence and being able to download your consciousness into a computer, and, you know, 30 years ago, people, when I said that, they'd look at me like I had 3 heads. I didn't know, you know. But you couple nanotechnology with man's nature to be entertained. And what do they want to do? They want to get in that video game, man. They want to feel the water splash on, the blood splash on. They want to feel the pain and all of that, and be able to take the headset off when they get done. And wow, that was a trip. Well, where do you think you already are? If we're going to get there, why in the world would you not think God isn't already there? He's a million times ahead of us. A million times. A million doesn't give it enough numbers. We could be between point A, the Big Bang, and 14.7 billion years later, where we think we are today, or point A, the Big Bang, 14.7 billion years later, where we think we are today at point B, or we could already be where it's conceivable point C. Now, nanotechnology means they're going to be able to send little robots into people's brains. They're going to be able to send information outside of people's brains, and they're going to be able to see and tell and map and know exactly what's happening inside the brain. What enzyme is being transmitted down a neurotransmitter, what protein is being transmitted from this point to that point, etc., etc., etc. They've already mapped the human genome. So all of this stuff is just futuristic stuff that they're going to be able to do. We already know they're going to take a nano, inject it into your body, and it's going to go up there and clear out your damn plaque around your heart so that you don't have a heart attack. I mean, we already know they're going to do that stuff. They're already doing that stuff. They're going to use nanotechnology to rebuild nerves and what have you. They're going to be using 3D printers to make hearts in laboratories from stem cells that they harvested from your bone marrow and then reproduced enough so they could build a heart with it. That sort of thing. Why in the world, if you can believe that man can get to this point that we're talking about, Why would you not think God isn't already there? They're already talking about how they know there's multiple dimensions. Here's one that'll really blow your mind. I'm from the old school. There's some of these people out there from the old school too. When you turn the TV on back in the old days, and it was black and white, there would be a little tiny dot. And it would just like, boom, it would grow exponentially. Did I not just describe the Big Bang? Huh? What are you going to do with eternity? You're going to live a life, you're going to live through that life, and then you're going to die. That's what you're going to do with eternity. And then you're going to go back to, and it says it in the Bible, you got a soul in heaven and a spirit on earth. And you're going to go back to your soul, and you're going to get to see all the other things that you've done. And if you made it to heaven, then you're going to be out building worlds and doing the things, that we're already doing, basically. How could you not be? You'd have to be dumb to not think. And look, somebody's saying that Stephen Hawking said there is no God, but they said they found it on his computer after he died. That's just like politics. You can believe what you want to believe. And I'm going to tell you right now, most of them people in politics, self-serving, unbelievably corrupt. They want nothing but to deal drugs to your children. Obama stopped Hezbollah terrorists now, from dealing drugs in America. During the Jimmy Carter administration, they took 57 embassy hostages. They kept them for almost 500 days. Why did we not make a deal with them? Because we don't deal with terrorists. And they tried to rescue them, but they made a mistake because the helicopters weren't retrofitted for that fine sand in it, and it caused a problem. Well, then they broke them up and distributed them around, and our intel lost track of where they were. So what did Reagan do? He did something brilliant. He wasn't going to negotiate with terrorists either. But he went ahead and sent a covert ransom payment to Iran in order to get the 57 hostages home so that they wouldn't languish over there. He didn't want them to languish over there, see. So he got them home. But right after he got them home, he went to the State Department and said, look, tell everybody in Iran, get out right now, go out right now, send them all messages, tell them to get the hell out of Iran right now. And they did. The State Department went out and they gave out all that information to all the people that they knew, that Americans that were in Iran, and told them, look, you need to get out of Iran right now. And so he also made an announcement that don't go to Iran. If you're an engineer building a building, or if you're going to build a dam, or if you're doing this or you're doing that, it doesn't matter what amount of money they're paying you, don't go. And of course people win anyway because they're stupid. But Iran has never stopped being terrorists. They took more hostages underneath Reagan, which he got the embassy employees because they were kind of personal, He got them home through Oliver North's office. Him and his secretary shredding the documents of the Iranian deal. Hello. Okay, so he got them home. But the minute he got them home, and he made sure everybody in Iran had the word, they had a few weeks to get out of Iran, he froze their assets. Why? Because if I took a knife and put it to your child's throat and told you to sign this contract or I'm going to cut your child's throat, is that contract legitimate? No, it's not. It's called under duress. So, was that Iran's money that Obama took over to Iran? It was frozen assets. because they were terrorists. Not just that, they're state sponsors of CAIR and ISIL and ISIS and Hamas and Hezbollah. And here's the worst part of it all. Obama stopped Hezbollah terrorists bust. They had them busted. They've been on them since before 2009. They were ready to take a bunch of them down for dealing drugs in America. But he stopped that from happening. So what happened as a result? All you need is a world almanac that now has statistics online with a cheap app. Okay? Go back and look at the World Almanac and look at the history of the overdoses in America. From 2009 till today, there's been 500,000 overdoses. Kids too young to understand the consequences of their actions, let alone the concept of weaponized drugs. It's just like when the planes hit the buildings and somebody looked up and said, "Wow, it's a new form of warfare." Well, guess what? Weaponized drugs is a new form of warfare. Parents, warn your kids. It's the most important thing I can tell you right now. Warn your children. I'm just saying. I can ace a ninja test. You show me the arrows that point to the X, I'll see it every time. Every time. Talk to the morticians. Ask the cops what happened to the sane source dealer that sold those kids them drugs that were weak opioids, and then overnight they turned to 100 times stronger fentanyl. Enough fentanyl, in fact, to kill 50 men. What happened to them guys? Oh, they packed their house up and left country before their bait and switch poison even hit the street. Ask yourself a question. What drug dealer would work such a sinister plan to kill their own customers? Isn't it the obvious point to have living, paying customers? Come on now. We're talking about our kids. Has 500,000, most of them military-age kids now, has that inhibited our ability to defend ourselves if we need to enact a draft tomorrow? Now look up treason, Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution. And our founding forefathers were very specific about treason. Why? Because the old English oligarchs abused it. One, there needs to be an act of war. We have two. We have the war on drugs that was enacted by Ronald Reagan. $470,000 was appropriated by Congress, which made it legitimate. It used to be it had to be made by Congress, but they changed that when Pearl Harbor happened, so that a president can declare the war, and then if it's backed up by Congress with appropriations, it makes it legitimate. The second one was September 14th, 2001. G.W. Bush declared the war on terror. And what did he say? What was his stipulation along with that? Quote, "You're either with us or against us." So what is Iran? They took 57 hostages. They took even more hostages under Reagan. They've taken more hostages since then. They're state sponsor of CAIR and ISIL and ISIS and Hamas and Hezbollah. Hezbollah is now dealing weaponized drugs in America. People, wake up. Wake up. In order for your fantasy utopian concept of the world to work, they have to be on board. They're not. And yeah, I just cussed out America. Maybe y'all will figure it out. I don't know what else to do. I really don't. Call it Kenny's Think Tank. Look, I love y'all. God bless y'all. And I do mean that. God bless y'all. Okay? And not that cult that they want to claim as a religion, because it's not. And if you want to know the truth of that, there's an ex-CIA lady. Her name is Claire, C-L-A-R-E, Lopez, on YouTube. Look her up. Check her out. Get yourself an English version of the Quran. Compare it to the Bible and you'll figure it out. I love you. Good night. Y'all have a good one. And please, people, please, wake up. We'll see you.